Hey, folks, hope you're all doing well. It's that time again, that time of the month where we rank albums. And for today, we're going to be talking about The Cult. And been a lot of interest. We haven't even aired, and I've already got a whole bunch of comments here. And, Cult's one of those bands, oh my God, did I say The Cult? Jesus. We were just talking about The Cult. I apologize. The Police. If you came to watch The Police, we're doing the Police show. My apologies. Yeah, there's been a lot of interest, a lot of comments already about The Police, and it's just one of those bands that, man, they came on strong there in the late '70s, early '80s, and only put out 5 records, and then they kind of went away, but they definitely made an imprint and some fantastic musicianship as well as great songwriting. So, to do the ranking of the Police records, I've got my partners in crime here. I've got Martin Popoff and Mr. P. Pardo. How you gentlemen doing?
Doing great.
Doing good.
Yeah, we were talking about the
I was
Cult
worried
off.
I came to the wrong, prepared for the wrong show.
I know we're talking about the Cult off air. Like, oh, we
Panicked
talking
a
about
little
the
too,
Cult.
yeah.
I caught myself. So, yeah, there's already been a bunch of comments. So let me say hello to a few people and mention some of these comments before we get going. So we had one really interesting comment that came in like a day ago, and this is from Blue Jay Fan 55, and this is something I never thought about. Maybe something you guys want to talk about here. He said that got to get this in. He says Sting told BOC Bloister Cult that he lifted "Don't Fear the Reaper" for Message in a Bottle. Think about that. Now, when you imagine the two riffs, yeah, there is kind of some similarity there, eh? I mean, that's pretty interesting thing to think about. We also have Gary Joyce in here. Welcome. We got Louis Began Dumas. We have the real Alexander, Mr. Frickin' Frackin'. Welcome, Minty Fresh. We had one other name in here. We got Pooh Ninja. Welcome, Tyler Patterson. Welcome. I got a bunch of people in here. We got John the Dark Wizard, Captain Beyond. Welcome, gentlemen. And Pete Brown. And Stephen David. Welcome. All right. So we're going to be talking about the Police. So as per usual, I go around. Martin, what was your first introduction to the Police?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I never really thought about that, but it definitely would have been the debut album.
Okay.
Getting it probably, liking it, not loving it. We were uncompromising metalheads at that time. Loved heavy punk too, but metalheads basically at that point. We're talking, November '78. So, post-punk starting. Undeniably thinking, this is pretty interesting. It's famous. It's fresh. People are into it. Kind of respected it, but didn't love it. And then as soon as the next album comes out, you go, yeah, these guys are pretty special. This is really interesting. Nobody's doing anything like this. At that point, you're kind of more on board. My mind is opening up a little more too. But just thinking it was, pretty interesting. Not really my thing, but I can see what people like about it.
Yeah, definitely. Pete, yourself?
Roxanne.
Yeah.
That was it. I mean, I'm, I knew you were going to ask that question. I'm just thinking, I don't remember never not hearing about the Police, from the day they came out, right? Always on the radio, always on MTV. I never bought any of these back in the day, but like Martin said, they were always around. I was a metalhead too. And I was kind of like, all right, the Police are okay for what they do. I'm not a big fan, but I never disliked them. And as time went on, I grew to appreciate them more and more. And just one of the biggest bands of the era, right?
Yeah, in a really short time too, when you think about it, about 5 years, right? They kind of ruled the world there for a while. For myself, and I don't know if Martin, you were in Ontario at this point, or if you know aware of the show, The New Music. So there was a show called The New Music that was like a weekly show, and they would show new bands and whatever. And they really spent a lot of time on the Police, and they followed them on their tour. There was a lot of shows dedicated to the Police, and at that time, that's when you had the ska movement happening, in England, right? We had bands like Madness, One Step Beyond and all that. So you kind of had that ska thing that, at least in Canada, because of shows like the New Music, I was hearing a lot of that stuff. And then you see these guys that were basically incorporating ska, which is really, kind of very reggae like, in their music. And it was like, it was a new blend. It was something that, they were combining, reggae and pop, and then earlier on as well some punk elements, right? And I just remember really digging them, and just thinking they were. I mean, the songs were so freaking catchy. Like, I mean, you mentioned Roxanne, and those early records, and yeah, and that. So I didn't. I think probably for me it was around 1980. Maybe 79, 80, from hearing them on the radio and stuff, and and just, yeah, they were just really, really cool. There was nobody doing that at that time, and they really fell in nicely with that whole movement that was happening at the time. The whole new wave thing, right? They were sort of the new wave poster children, really, for that time. So it's very, very cool.
Even though when you look back on them now, they really didn't fit in any bucket.
No,
right? They really didn't.
No, I mean, yeah, they were like new wave, but because they were new, I mean, the new part of it, right? But it was just something new, and who knew what new wave would entail? But it's just cool that they the combination of elements at the time and that mixture, right? That was something that was very, very new at the time, right? And actually, if you think about it, there's really not a lot of bands that kept doing that continued in that vein. So it was sort of their own recipe, right?
Hack, it's interesting. You think about it. You think of, okay, post-punk, you think of punk, you think of new wave, and you can kind of put a bunch of bands all together, but you're right. These guys stand alone.
Yeah.
The other band that stands alone like this is Dire Straits, right? Dire Straits just comes and does this weird kind of timeless, strange music. It's not strange. It's very conservative, but it's like, what is this blend? You're not, a new band doing this right now seems kind of strange. I don't understand what's going on here. So it's those two bands, because Elvis Costello, Joe Jackson, the Cars, the Romantics, Talking Heads, all of that, you wouldn't say it's a new sound, right?
No, it's it's all
a bunch of pieces put together and blah blah blah, and here's our package. But Dire Straits and the Police were like, they kind of stood off alone, I think.
Yeah, and coming from England, I mean, there was such a variety. I mean, you had bands like, straight up pop bands like Haircut 100, but then you had bands like Susie and the Banshees, Echo and the Bunnymen, and everybody kind of had their own thing. Some were kind of gothy and others were just straight up pop, right? I mean, there was that. I mean, new wave, the only thing that sort of puts them all together is the new title. The wave part of it, I guess, just wave meaning let's throw everything, every genre,
Yeah. And I'll just expand on one more point. The whole reggae thing, ska, that's the two-tone movement, right? So you had the black and white checkered look, right? So
right. The Specials,
Madness,
and English beat. Yeah.
And, the Clash started dealing in this a little bit. The Police were a big one. So the whole reggae thing over there was it had a long history with Jamaican immigration and all this sort of thing.
Right.
Bob Marley was big, period, anyways.
Yeah.
But yeah. And when you get to post-punk, they have a lot of like reggae, or even moving into the whole dub idea, right? The more trancy, dancey version of it. Kind of thing. So yeah, that's another part of it. But yeah, the Police are definitely combining something. It's almost like the Police are like a combination of Dire Straits and reggae, more than anything, right? Which is a bizarre way of putting it, but
yeah. Alrighty, so they've only got 5 records, so we're just gonna starting from 5, and we're gonna count our way up to number 1. So we'll go Martin next to me, and then we'll go Pete. So what have you got for your number 5 pick, Martin?
Well, my number 5 and my number 1 are for sure's. And my 4, 3, and 2 are a little bit of a mess. But my number 5 is Zenyatta Mondatta. I'm astounded to see that this is only double platinum in the States. But to me, it almost seems like the Police are already bored with the sound they've invented at this point. It's kind of like an Empty Calories album. It's a little poppy and airy and frivolous. That's the way I think of this album. I never liked the singles. Don't Stand So Close to Me, Do. Driven to Tears. To me, this is almost like where uh, the shtick that they have, they do their most unremarkable songs in that shtick, and they're kind of quiet and sparse. There's just not a lot going on the songs on this. So, and I remember at the time, deep music fans, even though the Police was getting more popular with this than they were on the previous album, I think music fans felt a little impatience with it as well. They thought, the trick ain't working as good here as it did on Regatta de Blanc. So yeah, to me, I'm frustrated with most of the songs on here. I just feel it's a little phoned in. It's a little phoned in. It's a little frivolous. It's a little too poppy. It's a little too happy sounding. Little, carnival-esque, a little children's music-y sounding. So yeah, that's my number 5.
Wow. Okay. All right. I can tell this list is going to be completely different from guy to guy. That's what these shows are for, man.
Right.
All right. What do you got for number 5, Pete?
So full disclosure. So Martin and I ranked this catalog together like 3 years ago.
Okay.
Tranquility. And I hadn't thought about it in all these years. And I actually went and rewatched it earlier today. And then I went and listened to the albums to see if I still agreed with what I said about how I ranked the albums 3 years ago. And I made some changes and made some changes again. And then, as always, I say, all right, I'm not going to make any more changes. But my number 5 stayed exactly the same. And that is Outlandos de Amor from 79.
Okay.
It's always been my least favorite. I like the energy of the album. But for me, I don't think everything kind of fell into place yet. There are some, I really like the hits. That's one of the things that I talked about when Martin and I did the ranking 3 years ago. This is one of those bands where I really love their hits. Normally, with a lot of these more popular bands, I tend to not. I like the deep cuts better. With the Police, I think most of their hits are dynamite, and there's a ton of them. Next to You is great. So Lonely is great. Roxanne is great. Can't Stand Losing You is great. The rest of the album is okay. I think what it comes down to is I think all the other albums, the band sounds a little more realized to me. I like more of the songs. I like the deeper cuts, and I like the hits even more. But this is still a very, very solid debut, I think. And I don't dislike it at all, but it's always been my least favorite, and I'm going to stick to that today.
Okay. Yeah, this is going to be different. All right. Okay, so my number 5 is Ghost in the Machine. So you're talking about the hits. This thing starts off with the first 3 songs are awesome, especially Invisible Sun. I mean, it's so somber and cool. I love the mood of that song. That's one of my favorite Police songs. Then you get Hungry for You in French, and this is the first of those tracks where there's a riff that goes on with some slight variation, and it just keeps repeating. There's no B section, okay? There's no chorus. To me, this sounds just like lazy songwriting. It's like, let's play a riff, and I'm going to do this now, and I'm going to add this. I mean, it's not a song, right? And it's done again on Demolition Man. Yeah, the riff is cool, but not for 6 freaking minutes. And they're just playing it over and over again with a slight, maybe I'll play a little different guitar lick over this bit, but it's the same thing over and over again. And that just it doesn't do it for me, And then they do it again on Too Much Information. It's like listener fatigue for me big time on that, right? I mean, they do redeem themselves. I know. Telling you what I think, man, and they redeem themselves a little bit on Rehumanize Yourself, Secret Journey, but for me, Omega Man, that is the redeemable song on this. That's a great tune, right? Love that. One World, Not There, See Above, same thing. I don't want it to repeat again. I don't want to repeat myself. Darkness is okay. I mean, the album starts out great, but then it just totally trails off on me. I mean, it's just don't play a riff for 6 minutes and call that a song. I'm sorry. It's just, it doesn't cut it. Like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe, we're recording this in some fancy, at this point, they're at some fancy studio, whatever, having cocktails and whatever. Oh, you got to do a song. Okay, I got this riff. Let's cut this. I mean, come on. It just, I'm sorry. I know I'm going to get a lot of hate, but Ghost in the Machine, but it sold a lot of records because, like all the records, they always had those great singles. But it's like then they went to sleep for the rest of the record. And this to me is a prime example of that. So Ghost in the Machine is my number 5. All right. What do you got for number 4, Martin?
Oh man, what a mess. I have no idea what to do. I don't know how this is going to line up with how Pete and I did it, but I've just decided I'm going to go with like almost like my my gut instinct, my heart, kind of like my respect for these albums, I think. So on that front, I'm going to have to put Outlandos D'Amour for next. So this is 4th. I agree with what Pete said. It just feels a little uncooked. They haven't really discovered this amazing sound that they were going to have. I mean, which is not a bad thing. I mean, if this was, a masterpiece, then I like it more than their real sound, right? But I just feel like it's like a very conservative version of this really cool sound that they're going to come up with. The songs are amazing. I mean, most of them are actually really cool. I love Born in the 50s and Truth Hits Everybody and Be My Girl Sally. Like, I love the deep tracks on this. Hole in My Life. And then the hits are To Die For. Roxanne, So Lonely. Next to You is cool too, and it's not a typical Police song. Can't Stand Losing You is typical Police, but it's almost like I definitely feel like this album has way more songs that I find useful and I like than my number 2 and my number 3. But the peaks and valleys on my number 2 and number 3, like there's 3 or 4 songs that I think are masterpieces. I just love them to death. I probably like them more than any songs on my number 1. So I'm going to save them for that. And I feel like they get a little more sophisticated and interesting. So yeah, I'm going to go with this here. But I'm not happy about it because I love this album to death. It's probably an 8 out of 10 for me, at least. So I'm going to go with that as my number 4 out of 5.
All right. Okay. What do we got for number 4, Pete?
All right. So real quick, before I go to my number 4, I'll tell the Police story that I tell all the time whenever I talk about the Police. So on their very first U.S. tour for the debut album, the 3rd gig of the tour was set to happen at the Chance Theater in Poughkeepsie, New York, which is where we had Sea of Tranquility Fall Fest last year, and happened on the night of a terrible snowstorm, and only 4 people showed up to the gig.
Wow.
So the Police's 3rd ever show was here in the Hudson Valley in a snowstorm to 4 people.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I know, right? Crazy. Yeah. And then, of course, like a year or 2 later, right, they're the biggest band on the planet. So go figure.
Yeah.
Imagine being one of those 4 people today. You're like, I was one of the 4 people at that show. Yeah. All right. So this is an album, my number 4, that really sunk down compared to 3 years ago when Martin and I did this back then. And I'm going to go with Synchronicity. This was, I believe, my number 2 last time. Huge album. 2 title tracks are great, like really great. Yeah. And the stuff that's really great on here is really great. I love King of Pain. I think that's a terrific pop song. I probably never need to hear Every Breath You Take ever again. For many, many years, I thought, hey, it's a great pop song, whatever. Now I'm just kind of like, all right, I've had enough of it. Tea in the Sahara is great. Murder by Numbers is such a cool song. And, when you really get into the whole lyrics behind it, it's, even cooler. Walking in Your Footsteps is also really good. But there's a couple other tracks on here I'm not that nuts about. And I think that in re-listening to this catalog this week, just made me realize that the other 3 albums I like much better than this. But there are, like I said, the 2 Synchronicity songs, Walking in Your Footsteps and Tea in the Sahara are so good. And King of Pain is just like a terrific, terrific song. Classic. So, yeah, it's my number 4. But again, could change. And these could change any time, any place, any day.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, I said our lists were going to be really different, but not this time. Yeah, not for this one anyway. So Synchronicity, Synchronicity 1 and 2, great songs.
Yeah.
Walking in Your Footsteps, here we go again. No changes, just repetitive for me. Oh My God has some modulations, so I'm good with that. It's got a B section. It's a decent song. Mother, I think that should have been kept in private as a private matter between Andy and his mom. It didn't need to be on a record. Just saying.
Martin and I disagreed about that 3 years ago, big time. Because I don't like
Yeah. Oh, it's why waste space with that. Miss Gordenko is pretty good. Every Breath, like you mentioned, good song, but been played a million times. King of Pain is great. I mean, it's definitely the best track on here. It's one of my favorite songs. It has that same sort of somber vibe to it as Invisible Sun. It's got some absolutely beautiful changes on it. That's just a really good song. Wrapped Around Your Finger has got that great, and they use this device quite a bit. You know, that whole light and shade, you hear a lot about that mentioned in with Zeppelin and such, but they use that device quite a bit in this song where, the verses are kind of dark, and then you get that switch over, that light up tempo chorus comes in, and it's just that transition, and it just locks you right in. So that's a really good example of that. It's well done. Tea in the Sahara. Okay, it's got a really catchy chorus. Both this album and Ghost in the Machine, the hits are really, really good, but there's just not a lot of deep cuts that I really, really enjoy on these two records. So these are why they're my 4 and 5. The other ones are another story, but not. And again, I should mention that none of these albums are terrible. I mean, I beat up pretty hard on Ghost in the Machine, but it's not a terrible record. It's just there's other ones that are much, much better, and those are going to be higher in my ranking. So there you go.
You know what I was just thinking of, and this album never comes up in these conversations, but we often talk about those great final albums by bands that put out like a really noteworthy album and then go off into the sunset. This is a perfect example of one, regardless of where we rank it, right? I mean, there's no denying it's a classic album, right? It's a monster album. And that last album, boy, can you get any better than that?
Yeah, I mean, King of Pain alone and Wrapped Around Your Finger. Those are the two killer tracks for me on this record. Yeah. Really good songs. All right. What do you got for number 3, Martin?
Okay, I've got Synchronicity, and for mostly different reasons, I suppose. So I really like Miss Gradenko. I really like Mother. I find it very King Crimson-esque. I love that vocal. It's a little uncomfortable lyrically, of course. But yeah, I think it's a good, daring, cool track. And I really quite like King of Pain as well. Every Breath You Take, I hated that song since the moment it came out. It was like that police selling out, doing something really dull, boring, stupid. Always, it was like the enemy of police songs. And then I find like there's a bunch of songs on here that have that. They're too quiet. There's not enough going on thing that I feel like is on Zenyatta Mondata. That's like the arrangement just isn't there. They just kind of threw something together and they kept it kind of simple, and that bothered me. But Synchronicity 1 and Synchronicity 2 are two of my favorite Police songs of all time. Probably Synchronicity 1 is my favorite. So again, Pete and I did a show, Peaks and Valleys albums, right?
Yep.
And this is a perfect example why, Outlandos d'Amour is all 7s and 8s songs all throughout. But none of the songs rise to Synchronicity 1 and Synchronicity 2 for me on this. So this is a real true Peaks and Valleys where I just love some of the songs so much. But almost half of it I'm not super crazy about. So that's why I've got it in there.
All righty. Okay. What's your number 3, Pete?
All right. 1, 2, and 3 for me are, I stressed a lot about this, how way to put it. So to me, my top 3 are, there's like a gulf between number 4 and then the rest of them. I'm going to go with today, Regatta de Blanc from 1979. Great album. Kind of pains me to put it here. Great drumming on this album. Really great drumming on this album. Love the production. Love the crisp guitars. I mean, the way this album sounds is just terrific. All the instruments just really crystal clear. The hits are great. I mean, Message in a Bottle, Walking on the Moon, terrific. I love the title track. Bring on the Night is great. Death Wish is great. I mean, you can't say anything bad about this album at all. And this is a band fully firing on all cylinders very, very quickly. And they just hit the ground running from here and never look back. So, yeah, this could be higher. I'm guessing it'll be higher on both of yours, but terrific, terrific album. It should be higher on mine, but kind of really dig my number 1 and 2.
Right. Well, we're 2 for 2, Pete, because that's also my number 3. I just want to make a quick mention, and Martin, you being a drummer, maybe you can expand on this. In listening to the catalog, I mean, there's a couple of devices that I noticed they use in the songwriting. One I mentioned, and I'll mention it again because it comes up again. But the drum thing, I mean, first of all, Stuart Copeland is not your atypical drummer. He's not a timekeeper. He's not sitting there on a hi-hat and a snare. He's playing the drums almost like an orchestral instrument, right? He's doing washes on the hi-hat, and he's playing around the beat. But one thing I noticed, one device that they use quite often is he'll play kind of around the beat until the chorus kicks in, and then he's on the beat. It's almost like, by him playing on the one, when it comes to the chorus, it's almost like he's highlighting it, he's underlining it, like this is the chorus, really imprinting it on your brain. Have you guys noticed that in his drumming? That he's it's almost like he's meandering, and then the chorus comes in, and he's there. Do you guys pick up on that? Or is that just something I noticed?
Not quite. I mean, I just feel like he's a really good drummer, so he'll be on the beat. The two things that distinguish him, one is way up there, but another one is a really kind of like a tight snare sound. So he's got a really high snare.
Oh, there's no ribbon on the snare either. It's just a snap, like
and the big thing, and also, I mean, this is the whole band structurally, but he's also kind of a reggae drummer, I suppose. But the big thing that distinguishes him is the hilarious sort of independence of the ride or the hi-hat thing, right? So it's almost like he's doing a little independent dance on either the ride cymbal, and then using the bell in that as well, and also the hi-hat. So there's like this interesting conversation going on where there's no rules as to how I'm going to do this simple beat on the hi-hat or the ride cymbal, and like I say, using the bell as well. So that's his main signature move, right? Is just ding 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 ding, that thing, right? And where it's like, drummers talk about 4-limb independence and polyrhythms and things like that. 4-limb independence means you get to a point where you literally can do independent things on the limbs that aren't tied to each other. So he's got the 1-limb independence definitely going, which is that accompaniment on the ride or the hi-hat. That's his big thing.
And he tunes the drums really bright. I mean, his snare hits almost sound like rim shots. They're so bright. Like there's no bottom to his drums.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I just noticed that, from song to song, he's kind of this, is that, and then you hear that snare on the one as soon as they hit the chorus. I don't know, but it's very effective. It's very effective because it really imprints that, this is the chorus coming up. But anyways, yeah. So I picked for number 3. I picked Reggatta de Blanc. This one has the deep cuts that I like. Plus, it features. You were kind of talking about this a little bit. Like you really hear the musicianship of the 3 guys playing as a unit in this record, because there's no keyboards, there's no electronic bass. It's like it's the 3 guys playing their instruments, and you can kind of hear the tightness of the band as a whole. I'm not going to mention the hits because everybody knows what the hits are. The title cut, basically an instrumental, Reggatta de Blanc, but very, very cool song. They still have a bit of the punk in them at this point, which is cool. It's All Right For You. Very cool song. Very kind of punky. Bring On the Night, man. It's got such beautiful guitar from Andy. Like, that guitar part running underneath it. Those inversions he's playing sound amazing. I like Stewart's On Any Other Day, despite its politically incorrect lyrics, but still a really, really cool song. No Time This Time is another punky tune, which isn't bad. This one ranks at 3 because for me and not higher, because I think the deeper cuts on the upcoming records are a little bit better, and it's got deeper cuts than the 4 and 5 that I picked. So, but yeah, it's just, this sounds like a band playing as a unit, and you can really hear the tightness and sort of the, the groove of the band in this record. So that's why, and it's recorded beautifully. Like the instruments sound like they're right there. You know what I mean? There's no uh, fakery going on. So that's my number 3. Alrighty, what do we got for number 2?
Okay, so I've got Ghost in the Machine next. And so I appreciate the fact that this is their most produced album. It's got horns on it and like keyboards, and it's just the most polished. It's the most ambitious. I felt like almost starved for that after Zenyatta on Data, so I appreciate that about it. Having said that, I have just the same complaints I do of Synchronicity, in that there's a bunch of songs on here that really kind of rub me the wrong way. They're too funky, too atonal, too kind of like a minor key, atonal, funky. And I don't think the horns work particularly good on those ones. So yeah, you know, something like Hungry for You, Demolition Man, Too Much Information, Rehumanize Yourself, One World. That basically those 5 in a row. I get a fair bit out of them, but they also like you know, they're kind of sour sounding to me. They make me wrinkle my nose, sort of thing. Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic totally wins me over. I think it's a beautiful pop song, but Spirits in the Material World, Omega Man and Secret. So Omega Man and Secret Journey are definitely right up there with the 2 Synchronicities as my favorite Police songs, period. Right. Love them to death. Love Omega Man. Just good, heavy rockin', driving rocker. Secret Journey's cool. I like these moody, dark ones that they do. They don't do that enough. But yeah, I just, you know, if you would ask me before this came out, say, hey, you know, how about the next Police album? We put a bunch of keyboards and horns on it. I would have been like ran the other way. Right. But I actually think it kind of works. And so, like when I said I'm going to go with my respect level thing, I really respect this album, pretty much the most out of all of them. But I certainly don't like it the most. So I've got to hear it number 2. So,
All
I
right.
hope I'm right that I didn't check. I didn't check whether this is all true real horns or not. It looks like in the credits none of it's horns. Maybe. Hang on. Bass, keyboard, saxophone. So we got a sax there, synth, guitar effects, guitar synthesizer. So yeah, so the synths are a mix of guitar and synthesizer. I'm not seeing any horn section credits. So it must all be faked horns, but they sound like real horns to me. Although, like I say, there is saxophone in here. Credited to Sting, actually. So maybe there's doubled and tripled sax. To give you horn sounds. So I don't know, but I mean, basically it sounds like real horns all over the place, right? And the keyboards are not super plentiful, but I love what they do with them. I think they're great. I think the keyboards is a really neat addition to this band. So there you go, number 2.
Okay, what's your number 2, Pete?
So 3 years ago, this was my number 4, and then in re-listening to these albums again, I was like, what the hell was I thinking 3 years ago? I'm going to go with Ghost in the Machine.
Nice mug. Ghost in the Machine. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a really strong album. I love Spirits in the Material World. Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic, like Martin said, is a great pop song. I love Invisible Sun. I love Demolition Man. I know some of this stuff is kind of repetitive, but I don't mind it at all. I think Too Much Information is cool and quirky. I really dig that. One World, again, and I'm not much of a kind of reggae guy, but man, there's something about the groove to that song I really dig. And Omega Man is terrific, and I think Secret Journey is amazing. Arguably the best song on this album. So, yeah, this album holds up really, really well. I like the fact that it's got lots of layers and kind of really, in a way, kind of overproduced, but I think it really works. So, yeah, this one has risen up for me, number 2.
Okay. Well, this is where we separate.
Yeah.
That's my number 2.
Okay.
Come on. What a record, man. What a debut. Damn. I mean, deep cuts here, I mean, are really good. I dig the punk stuff. I love that. I love that punky side to them. And it really, on this record, this is where it's the most prevalent, right? Truth Hits Everybody and Next to You. I mean, those are just really cool punky tunes, and I dig them. you know. Or the other thing they do on this record too is they'll have kind of a reggae verse and then sort of a punky chorus like So Lonely or Can't Stop or Can't Stand Losing You, where it's kind of like reggae and then it kind of, maybe, or I guess you could call it poppy, but just more aggressive bar chords, on the choruses. I like that. The up tempo punk of Peanuts is great also. Born in the 50s, man. That is such a cool song. It is so different from them. It's different from anything else on this record. It almost reminds me of a Cheap Trick song. It's a really, definitely a hidden treasure on this record. Again, they have to put in something silly, right? Like Be My Girl Sally. That's another Andy song, kind of like Mother. Maybe it shouldn't have been put on an album, just saying. Masoko Tango, that kind of is an indication of, their world music leanings that were going to come up a little bit later. But man, just a damn good record, some excellent deep cuts. And, it's got the big hits on, Roxanne and so on. But I like that punkiness that they would throw in. And I watched a concert of theirs the other day, right? And it was a earlier in their career. And you could tell that when it came to that punky stuff, that Andy was just out of his element completely. Like you can tell they're not used to doing this, because he's a jazz guy, right?
Yeah.
He's a jazz guy. He's used to playing all these wonderful inversions and things and whatever. And he's like, I'm not used to banging on a chord, But he it just looks really awkward doing it. But he's an amazing guitar player too. I mean, my God. But there you go. That's my number 2.
So speaking of Andy, he played a solo show here in the Hudson Valley about a half hour from my house last night that like nobody knew about because they didn't advertise hardly at all.
Oh boy,
that would have been cool to see.
Yeah.
It's wicked. Yeah, cool. All right.
Number ones.
Number 1, I'm going with Regatta de Blanc. I think the sound absolutely comes together here. This is the most magical moment where the whole album is that Police sound. So it's the first album with that Police sound in whole. I think they're excited about it. Nigel Gray's production on it is amazing. I think it's probably the best sounding Police album. Because it does. I think Zenyatta Mondatta is a little thin on the bottom end, and this one has the bottom end still. But all the highs are there, so you hear the beautiful, acoustic guitar of Andy when he's doing that, like that Bring On the Night thing. But more importantly, you hear those hi-hats and those ride cymbals and those bells and stuff, right? In terms of a drum showcase of getting that signature Stuart Copeland sound, it's all over this. All the licks are there, all the firepower. The songs are great. So innovative of an album. It's just they're speaking this language nobody else speaks, right? I love On Any Other Day too, like the whole Stuart Copeland thing. And I mentioned, I think Pete, when we did that show, he had this alter ego Clark Kent, and they put out this really cool EP that sounds like that song basically On Any Other Day. But yeah, Message in a Bottle is amazing. I like even Regatta de Blanc as an instrumental is cool. No Time This Time is the cool kind of fast punky one, and at the end of that, Stuart gets to just throw in some really cool licks. There's these little fills, there's these neat fills. I think it's just it's the one that feels the coolest. It feels like a little bit like the Scorpions Blackout, or it feels like they're in fact, that's why I was thinking that. I did a episode of my podcast on blue album covers and how much I love this and how much I loved Blackout and Animal Magnetism and Foreigner Double Vision, like all these Metallica Ride the Lightning, all these early in the catalog blue album cover albums, right? No, I just think this is the showcase of that thing we love about the Police so much. There's not too many diversions off into weird places that you get on all of the other ones, except, like I say, Zenyatta Mondatta is as much the Police sound as this. It's just a less inspired version of it. They're really excited about it. This is the one for the musos, I think. There you go. It's my number one.
I mean, as far as them playing as a band and a unit and really hearing them play together, I think that album with the production showcases it really, really well. Definitely. All right. What's your number one, Pete?
And Martin, 3 years ago when we did the Police show, then when you were talking about that album, you said, I think I'm going to do a podcast about some cool blue album covers. So you did it right afterwards.
Funny. Wow.
I was watching it today. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember you said that. Yeah. Well, it was my number one 3 years ago. It's still my number one today. And that is Zenyatta Mondatta. To me, which is the album that's the most fun to listen to for me? And it's this one. To me, it's got the best sequencing of songs that just totally rock my world. I mean, Don't Stand So Close to Me is a great track. Driven to Tears, I love those shimmering guitar chords in there. I love the chorus. Excellent. When the World Is Running Down, it's got the longest line in the history of rock. Such a great song. Canary in a Coal Mine is so much fun. Voices Inside My Head is so cool. Bombs Away is terrific. They do the da. It's stupid, but I don't care. I love it. I mean, the whole album is just really, really good. To me, it doesn't get much better than all those songs that I just rattled off. And the other songs are really good too. Other albums might have bigger hits, but I think to me, these songs are the most fun to listen to. This is, to me, is a really, really fun Police album, and it's my number one.
Well, I could not agree more. Man, this was the first Police album I ever bought. I mean, all the punk leanings are gone at this point, right? They're gone. Instead, they substitute that in with reggae and absolutely pop perfection on here. Again, I love that this is the sound of the three of them without any big production. This is the three guys. This is the three instruments. And I love that, right? I mean, there's so many highlights here, right? Don't Stand So Close to Me. Again, another example of the very dark, moody verse, right? And then with the happy chorus, don't stand, I mean, come on. Like, stuff like that just sticks in your head, right? Driven to Tears is great. When the World Is Running Down. What a groove on that song, man. That's got such a groove. But for me, my guilty pleasure, Canary in a Coal Mine. Come on. That's a guilty pleasure.
Is so cool, right?
Oh, my God. It is so cool. Just listen to that. It is so infectious. And his guitar with that, when he's doing the rhythm, he's got that slight slap back, man. It's just, it's perfect. Voices in My Head, cool. Bombs Away is great. The da. Again, if you listen to the verses, very kind of quiet, kind of morose, whatever. And then there's those bridge chords. It just goes from here to the bridge and then do. Like, there it is again, right? They do it again. And it just works so beautifully, man. These guys are just so good at that, in the songwriting department. Behind My Camel, for me, that's probably the weakest track. That's my weakest track. But Man in a Suitcase, that is so fun and catchy. Shadows in the Rain is okay. The Other Way of Stopping is okay. But all in all, this for me is their most consistent record. I mean, most of the tracks are good or amazing. And that's why this is my number. And I can listen to this record forever. Just for just for Canary in a Coal Mine, it wins, man. That song is just epic, And the pocket in that song is just, oh my God, it's amazing. Because I love just the three guys playing together and that pocket and that groove. I mean, come on. That's some masterful musicianship right there. And a great song. So there you go. That's my number one. Oh, we got the same number one. Wow.
It's
Okay.
pretty interesting. Looking at the certification. So the first one is certified according to Wiki, and we had a whole show about, are these things outdated? I don't know, but I mean, it's interesting. 5 albums on the same label, synchronicity is really high, so you wonder if this is kind of up to date. Sting sounds like the kind of guy who'd want to keep this up to date. Anyways, we got Outlandos at platinum, Regatta at platinum, Zenyatta at double platinum, Ghost in the Machine at triple platinum, and Synchronicity at 8 times platinum.
Wow.
What's surprising to me in that is that I would have thought, with the big hits that you've got on Outlandos d'Amour and Regatta de Blanc, to see both of those at just platinum is weird to me. I mean, to me, I would have thought triple platinum, triple platinum, triple platinum. Ghost in the Machine at triple platinum almost seems high to me. I just don't remember that being all that well received, right? And then Synchronicity at 8 times platinum is crazy high. But yeah, it seems about right. I mean, people were crazy about that album, right?
Well, that had all the videos, right?
Yeah.
Synchronicity.
But, you think of the debut with So Lonely, Roxanne, Can't Stand Losing You, and then all those deep tracks that make the radio sometimes too. I mean, that's a lot of huge songs on a record that's only platinum. Just that doesn't seem right, eh?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Alrighty. So, Martin, you want to mention anything you got coming up, book wise or otherwise?
Yeah, just all the books that are available are at martinpopoff.com. I've got an audio podcast every single week called History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff. We got the Contrarians video channel as well, and I'm on Pete's show every Friday morning. So we got one of those planned coming up. So yeah, that's about it.
All right. Link to Martin's website is below. What about yourself, Pete?
Yeah, we've got coming up on Friday. Martin and I are doing a part 2 of our What If little mini series. So last week we talked about what if certain younger rock stars didn't pass away. This week it'll be what if certain other things had or hadn't happened in the history of rock music pertaining to specific bands and lineups and albums and things like that. So we're going to have a little fun with that. So that's coming up on Friday. And then we're doing a Ranking the Album show on Sunday with Rick Labonte and myself. We're going to rank the catalog of the Winery Dogs. That's the band with
cool.
Mike Portnoy and Richie Kotzen. So we're doing that on Sunday. So yeah, that's coming up this weekend.
That's cool. That's cool. So folks, thanks for watching. If you want to help support the channel, the links are below. We'll be doing one of these again next month. And check out my original music. I got a playlist of original songs.
Shirts too.
Hey, I got shirts. I got hats. So what do you got? I got them all. What do you got? Mugs. I got them all. Check them out. Anyway, the links are below. And check out my. There's the mug. Martin's all sported out today. Check out the original music too. I should be working on something. I should have something new coming out in the next couple of weeks. So much appreciated. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we will catch you all next month. Hang out for a minute, guys. Take care. Cheers.